welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. If you are on the East Coast and if you are in the Middle East, it's an afternoon for you. So today's topic is something that is very close to our hearts. It's really just looking at what is it that we can do as individuals, corporations, and institutions to truly prepare our future for the future of work, our youth, for the future of work, essentially. So, and there's been a lot of changes, of course, as we know, fast-paced changes, technology with artificial intelligence, robotics, variations of the way that we work today, which all of this will accelerate economic growth and create new and different jobs. And this is going to happen globally. It's already happening. I think the last 2 years has accelerated this growth and change to a speed that nobody could have predicted. There's things that are happening today that in the future work we didn't think would happen for the next 10 years, and it happened in a very short amount of time. So I think it's a good time to discuss this topic. And really, essentially, what is it that's going to be needed for individuals as well as for corporations and for the institutions that are preparing these individuals to thrive in this unforeseen future, essentially. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at just a couple of different things about reports from organizations such as Deloitte and World Economic Forum and PwC and various others about what are their predictions about the future of work and what that might look like. Then we're going to look at what are the human skills then that are needed. If technology is taking over so much of everything that we do, what are the human skills that us as humans can still do that can make sure that we are maintaining our competitive edge in the world of work? And finally, what is it that each three of these categories can do, the individual, the corporation, and the institution, to essentially remain relevant in their respective industries? So a little bit about us, for those that are not familiar with us. So my name is Elena. I come from a background of higher education and learning. In fact, have spent the majority of the beginning of my career working in various higher education institutions and organizations in the US as well as the Middle East. Then later on transitioning to the corporate world and doing learning and development within the corporate world, doing this globally. In 2019, we co-founded Bestern with Ivan. And he's going to tell you a little bit more about what we do with Bestern. And Bloom Youth is a sister company essentially of Bestern, and this is who is being what this webinar is being delivered under. But yeah, that's a bit about me. Ivan, over to you.
Great, Elena, I'm super excited. So we are going to have two different perspectives, right? Because you come from the educational background and I simply come from the individual background. So a little bit about me. I am an engineer who turned into the corporate life for 17 years in corporate strategy and corporate innovation. One of the biggest challenges is that when we were onboarding in my corporate life, different people, it was kind of very difficult to have a quick onboarding that where the people were satisfied when they are coming fresh from university. You were feeling that there was not enough of these kind of human skills that were necessary, in fact, to thrive at work. To be thriving, it means I'm capable of and I'm happy doing that. So we are going to be discussing a bit about that. Myself, I've been working with Elena for already 3 years, and we know each other for 8, right? So 8 years that we know each other. And the reason why we launched the Bestern was because we understood that in order for people to learn, they needed to have something else, like a process to be able to learn quickly, to learn, in fact, how to learn, a mindset, and the motivation to learn. And this is where we came up with the idea of offering the possibility for people to have this mental process to learn new things, to put what they learn in a traditional training and make it happen with real behaviors, because this is the biggest expectations of all of the corporations. It is that when they pay for trainings, they have people who are behaving in a different manner. There is some change that is expected. And so we launched Bestern, and as Elena mentioned, Bloom Youth is about using this methodology earlier on with the youth, with people in high school, with people in universities. And what is quite unique about younger people is that they are more malleable. They are less formatted by routines, by rules, and then they have the possibility, in fact, to try even better to get improvements even in a quicker manner. So that's a little bit about us. We love talking about it. We have been sharing our views in terms of self-development, about new ways of learning in different tier 1 magazines like Entrepreneur, Thrive, Global. Our work in Besson has been recognized by venture capitalists and advisors who are quite reputable. One of the things that is quite important is that we have been working together with the government in terms of in the area of well-being and happiness. They were, in fact, the first one to support us, and later on we have been we have been backed up by Plug and Play, by Supercharger Ventures, which is quite amazing because there is, in fact, a recognition that what we do in terms of preparing the mindset and motivation of people is quite important in a society that is constantly changing, right?
So let's just take a look real quick around just kind of some of the reports that are coming out. And this is, in terms of what the future work will look like. And if what we've gone through in the last couple of years is not an indication enough in terms of how fast change can actually happen and how unpredictable things can be, essentially what we're also learning from some of these reports that are coming out is that when it comes to higher education systems, it's going to look very different from what it is today. So already, if you are working for an institution or maybe you're a student, you can see how much has it been impacted in the last 2 years. People are now kind of questioning, do I really need a 4-year degree? What is it that I really want to study? Today, still the most popular major in the undergraduate studies globally is business administration. That is a big question mark for educators because business administration is a degree that it's essentially just a degree. And sure, you learn the social and emotional aspects of being part of a class and being part of a university community, and there's a lot of social pieces to it. But business administration degree itself is not really something that's going to give you the skills to start a business or any particular career. It's a very general degree. And as technology is taking over more and more, we're starting to realize that actually having skill set, like actual skills, talents that we can implement in a job that makes it effective, like from day one, right? Like these technical skills, perhaps something analytical, whether it's, data science or cybersecurity or whatever it may be. These are the skills that people are starting to realize that are going to be needed for the future of work. So degrees such as, within a lot of the business administration kind of categories, liberal arts, they're important, but people are starting to question, is it really going to get me the job? And so a lot of students are questioning that. Institutions are seeing a drop in enrollments because of that. And in addition to that, it's just, there's so much more alternatives now available for individuals to educate themselves, to take on some kind of program that actually is going to give them that skill in a less amount of time, might be even cheaper than a traditional 4-year institution. So higher education, if those of you that are coming from higher education backgrounds, looking at what does that mean for you as in your profession? What does that mean for your institution? I think is a valid point. And again, we would have never predicted it, but the pandemic has definitely just completely took over the way we see education, and a lot of colleges and universities have gone out of business. The enrollment numbers are speaking for themselves. It's much more decreased than it was before. So I think there's going to be a lot of things happening, and this is also important for corporations because corporates who are recruiting from these institutions now need to look at what are the alternative ways they're going to find talent. And we're already seeing that some institutions, some organizations and corporations have actually created their own academies, right, in order to kind of substitute and close the gap that exists between university studies and what students learn in universities versus what the corporates actually want from their staff. So we know on that side, on the education side, that is definitely happening. It's in front of our eyes. We feel it, we recognize it. Another thing is that this, the other aspect is that days are gone where we stick with one job. It is almost normal that it is almost normal that we're going to be changing jobs. We're going to be looking for a little bit more flexibility in our work. We're going to be, trying different things throughout our lifetimes. There's this thing that's now called the YOLO economy. So YOLO, of course, we know you only live once. And the YOLO economy, where people are saying, do I really want to work in a corporate? And, is that what I really want to do? People look at it as maybe like, okay, maybe I'll do 2-3 years and then move on. So that's a real thing, and it's definitely happening today. And I think it's important to recognize, because again, as an individual, if that's the road we're going, if we're going to more short-term projects, freelance opportunities, consulting kind of gigs, and if the corporate world is going to look much different, what does that mean to us as individuals? What does that mean to us as institutions in terms of what do we actually need to provide as education? And corporations, again, do we need to think about how we're going to restructure the way we work? And what a lot of corporations are now doing is almost creating mini teams within organizations versus having this big bureaucratic machine. It's now looking as kind of having smaller teams that are able to get things done very quickly, to continue with innovation and et cetera, because we know in the bureaucratic pyramid of a corporation, if you're not able essentially to move fast, right? Same with higher education institution that's been in place for hundreds of years. They're not able to adapt to change fast enough to keep up with the times. So corporations are saying, how can we create internal teams to actually make sure that we are staying agile and we are moving quickly in innovation and creativity to maintain our business. So that's something that is definitely happening as well. Of course, in terms of what do employees, what do workers look for today, there's a big push on well-being. And again, it's linked to the YOLO economy. It's like people are starting to realize, wait a minute, I'm burnt out. My job can get rid of me any day. So I can lose my job any day, no matter how senior you are. And we've seen this, these are facts, right? We've seen a lot of high level individuals just losing their jobs as a result of the pandemic, which none of us could have predicted. And so that's a good indication, because people are realizing that everybody's replaceable essentially. And so that makes you question as an individual, okay, I'm putting 10, 20 years in an organization and I'm essentially killing myself for it because of all the stress that is connected to being part of a big corporate machine with a lot of pressure and business metrics. And starting to see, okay, well, like if that's not what it is, what is it that I can do? And now today, opportunities are more than ever to actually do something on freelance basis, on consultancy basis, on kind of small gigs, and still monetize, yet still live a very flexible lifestyle where you can be anywhere doing anything essentially, and still again making money and taking care of your livelihood. So I think all those things are definitely, again, being very much highlighted over the last couple of years. And a final point I'll mention here is that the idea of learning and training, right? It's no longer do we put a bunch of people in a classroom and we expect them to learn at a similar pace and similar kind of levels of understanding, because now education and learning is becoming more personalized, more individualized and tailored to that specific individual. And in a world where we're continuously distracted, really looking at what kind of learning experience can we create for an individual for them to actually be able to learn and make sure that learning sticks. That is also shifting. And again, for an individual, it's important to recognize, because we need to understand how do we best learn what works for us. As institutions, maybe we need to rethink our curriculum, maybe we need to rethink our content and how we provide education. And for corporations, when you're looking at upskilling, reskilling of your staff, right, moving forward, what does that look like? And are you putting enough priority into doing that as well? Any thoughts here, Ivan?
Elena, I just have to mention that something that is quite critical to think when we think about the future is, and you said it several times, is this dimension of agility. So if we are into boxes of studying a single topic, like business administration, when we don't have the possibility to combine and link together different topics that can create innovation, that can create passion, in fact. And passion is something that is quite important in terms of in the dimension of agility. If we think back about this concept of getting into flow, a little bit like kids playing with toys and getting immersed in what they do, and it is something that we as an adults, we have kind of lost. And it is what younger generation can benefit in terms of if they choose something with passion, because in the package that is a standard of business administration, there will be a couple of things, or maybe even the majority of things that you are not going to like. That's point one, that the future of work, it goes together with a sense of agility, something that where most of us have not been trained in university. University is telling us a linear vision of our future. The second point is that there is for our youth is that with the more technology is moving forward and artificial intelligence is taking over the low value added activities, the more we have the risk of being replaced. So the big question is, what should we do in order not to be replaced? From the psychology perspective of how the brain works, in fact, what we know is that there are certain things that humans will always do in a unique manner that cannot be mapped by artificial intelligence. In any case, not in the next 100 years. So everybody was expecting 10, 20 years ago that artificial intelligence was going to be already quite advanced. No, for the time being, artificial intelligence is just watching patterns of things, working with a lot of data, recognizing images, recognizing characters, but it cannot have the particularities of human beings in terms of critical thinking, about strategic thinking, in terms of innovation. So, but all of these skills is kind of, you cannot learn them in the linear way of what you learn in university. You have to, in fact, practice it, have some actions, because that's how the brain processes what we call meta skills. Skills that are about getting you into learning new skills, like curiosity. You don't learn curiosity. Even if you read a famous book about curiosity, you cannot learn it. So human beings needs to practice, have the possibility to practice before they go out into the wild west of corporate life. This type of skills, practice curiosity, practice mindfulness, practice self-awareness, a lot of things that are necessary in order to be at our best and kind of be irreplaceable, because that a machine, if you practice these skills, a machine cannot map it. So I guess it is time that I talk a little bit more about what it is, these human skills. So what I wanted to share with you is kind of an overview of what research groups think are the skills that are necessary, 24 skills that are organized in 4 different categories. On the way, so the first category, the one that we see in the top left, is the one how we think. Second one is how we manage ourselves. The third one is how we interact, and the fourth one is how we live. And these exact skills are the ones that cannot be done by a machine, not in the near term. And this is where the practice of these skills early on creates ritual. It's like, and we have been discussing quite a lot that, Elena. So we have been formatted our codes in our brain by rules, by the society, what people think about us, affect us in terms of our perception of the reality, the rules from our parents telling us, go and do engineer, go and be a doctor. These rules have been mapped, and in fact, most of our brain has all these rules. So the fact that you are capable of practicing these human skills will allow you, if you reinforce them continuously. So in a consistent basis, that if you practice it, it will help you to thrive at work. Now, we will discuss a little bit more about what are the options in terms of how can you practice it in reality. And the big question, the $1 million question is, is it the role of the university to do that? But, right? So let's move on and discuss a little bit more about it.
All right, so just to kind of also piggyback on everything that Yvonne is saying is that, first we looked at kind of just the general scheme of what is the future work, how is it changing, and kind of what might be required from us as individuals and institutions in order to adapt. And then also we talked about what are the skills that we actually need, right? What do we need to educate ourselves and our youth again, or not just our youth, but just us as people, like what do we need to know in order for us to maintain relevant? And then all of that kind of fits into 4 different scenarios that, again, organizations are predicting. So of course, there's research that's done by PwC and Deloitte and World Economic Forum about what are the potential, they're just guessing basically, what is the world of work is going to look like when it comes to us as corporations, for example. And so there's, maybe you guys have heard of it, but it's the red world, blue world, green world, and the yellow world. So this, again, we cannot necessarily predict, even with all these reports, it's very difficult to predict the reality of what's going to happen, but there is some accuracy, of course. It's just a matter of when it will happen, how it will happen, at what level. That's kind of what we need to keep in mind. So of course, if we talk about the red world, it's really just a world where innovation rules. This is where, companies are really, investing a lot of effort and money and time. And it's all about innovating and being the next big thing and kind of putting all the efforts to creating something that is just out of this world. So, and this is something that we already see in many aspects. We see companies that are doing this around the world, that it's all about innovation. And we hear this all the time. It's a buzzword, right? And this is why also some corporations today, even we see that are buying startups, because startups tend to be a little bit more quicker with innovation than a large corporation. So we see that happening already today. Then we also have an idea of the blue world, which is where corporate is king. And this is the prediction that maybe corporations are going to become so big that they're going to almost be the deciding factor in the world economies, world political decisions. And again, we already see this. Big examples of this is companies like Amazon and the Amazons of this world, the Teslas of this world, right? So a lot of things that are happening where so much money is being produced by the corporations that they're almost kind of driving the narrative of a lot of other things, whether it's politics, environmental issues, cultural issues, etc. So, and this is, again, it can be good or bad. Obviously, we're not going to go into pros and cons of corporations being that powerful, but again, we see this happening today already. The green world, where companies care, and this is a world where corporate social responsibility is a must-have for organizations. And again, we also see this. There's been a lot of laws that put into place in different countries saying your organization has to, lower its impact on environment in X, Y, and Z way based on the industry that you're in, based on kind of where your business operates and what is the impact that your business has on the environment. So corporate social responsibility is a big driver for many organizations, and is now being implemented and enforced by governments. So again, we see this happening. How much of that is going to be even more important? My guess is probably more and more important as environmental issues and all the kind of things that are happening in our environment today. And there's a lot of course, push for it. So I think that's going to be more and more prominent as we just really starting to realize that something is happening to our planet and we need to probably take care of it a little bit more. And then the final world we kind of look at is the yellow world, where again, the humans are putting humans first, essentially. So it's really just, making sure that we're taken care of as human beings, as individuals. So whether it's creating those unions that are just being mindful of how people work, making sure the safety is there. And what we see today happening is that there's a lot more push for well-being at work, right? So again, one of the newest kind of job titles that are out there is a chief well-being officer or chief human officer. Corporations are investing now in well-being perks. So before, 10 years ago, you're not going to have a well-being perk as part of your job package. Now it's almost a must. So more and more companies and employees also expecting that this company is going to have a well-being perk for me, whether it's access to mental health professionals, whether it's access to a gym or some kind of subscription to a fitness equipment or a meal plan, or maybe it's yoga on Fridays, or maybe they give out Fitbits, or maybe it is to help you prevent burnout, whatever it may be. Well-being is the talk these days as well. It's, again, well-being at work is a buzzword we hear quite a lot. So we see a lot of these things, Yvonne, happening already. It's just, it's probably all going to intensify all four of these scenarios, depending on kind of the industry, the business culture, maybe the geographical location. But we see all of these happening today. And so the question is to the audience to think about is, how is this going to impact me as an individual in terms of my career? What do I need to prepare for? If that is the areas that are kind of booming and on the rise, and these are the things that corporations are now leading with, what does that mean to me in my career progression, right? As an institution, if that's, again, if that's the future work, are we really preparing the future generations for it? And you might be getting away with it now in terms of just doing things the same old way. But 2, 3, 5 years from now, what does that look like in terms of your enrollment numbers as these trends becoming more and more popular? As a corporation, also, what kind of culture are you creating? What kind of talent are you bringing on? And how are you sourcing that talent? So, and this is kind of, as we go into the solutions, I kind of want us to go into more depth for each one. But I'll pause here, Yvonne, before I move on to kind of look at what is it that you think, if there's something you want to add? So, and then we go deeper into what can individuals do, what can corporations do, and what can institutions do.
Yeah, listen, Elena. So the world is what it is. I think that it is more important to dig a little bit in what people are expecting in terms of what should we do. Now, let me touch base a bit on the individual basis. So what we know from the brain perspective is that we will always have resistance to change. So our brain doesn't process change quite nicely. In fact, when there is change, we don't feel safe, we feel stress, and then we are kind of putting down a little bit all the skills that we have. Now, if we want to teach all these human skills that we have mentioned before, and that are important in order to be irreplaceable, then we need to reconsider the approach about learning. So using certain of the features of the brain, what we understand about the brain. One, the brain cannot process too much information in one go. So the fact that we have to learn the stuff in a very intense way, like for instance, when in corporates you have trainings of 8 hours, or sometimes it is a full week on the same topic. So let me tell you what, people who cannot learn, the brain is not made to get too long focus, and that's why people do not pay attention, because the brain can only process information when it has the opportunity to generate insights that are personalized. Is when you have a piece of information that is quite deep, where you have been focused, and then you have a process in order to generate insights and say, so how is it going to be useful for me? So if I have a piece of knowledge, so people need to have the possibility to take a chunk of learning, digest, and that's what the brain does it alone, in fact, digesting a little piece of information. The other thing is that and it's based on the work of several people who have been working in behavioral science, is that we only get motivated to learn if we have the application, we have the possibility to use it right away, a small piece of information or action that I should be doing. And this action should be a little bit challenging, but not too low in terms of the challenge, because then it becomes boring. So, and it's the famous the famous guy who talked about the concept of flow. So there is like a flow rail where actions should be a little bit challenging, so just above the capabilities that I have in order to generate this curiosity for searching, and not too much boring. And there is a guy called Mihaly, who wrote about it. In fact, that how we can generate, if we are into this process of flow, we can become more creative, and we can find, in fact, a passion, a little bit like some crazy scientists or some painters who have created some things that are beautiful. Is that because they get into the concept, into the area of flow. The other thing, and it's something that is that is quite tough, in fact, in our society, is the concept of safety. So that if I say something, I'm not going to be judged. So, but when we are in university or in school, or even in our corporate life, we always feel terrible to speak up, even if it is something that would potentially could be considered as a failure or something wrong, that we are always like protecting ourselves. And if you are in a culture or in an organization that is not allowing you to speak up because you feel constantly judged, you cannot learn. So you learn only if you have the possibility to say what you think and to have somebody to give you a feedback. But this feedback is not related to your performance. And by the way, that is one of the reasons why coaching is not that popular in the corporate life, because you always feel that there's a correlation between trusting someone and being penalized afterwards because you say something that you really mean. So the other thing about learning, it is that another thing that is important is to have like a process of iteration. So we say that you need to be in a safe environment, but it needs to be a little bit like a process of iteration where you want to try, explore, experiment things, and even do mistakes in order to be able to learn. So corporations and in the educational system where you have the possibility to do mistake, to experiment, do an action, do mistakes, but then take out a learning. So what happened with this action are places where people enjoy being. And it's quite correlated with our mental well-being. We feel at our best in our mental well-being when we feel that we belong to a team, that we are doing something with purpose. We are a team that is working for the bigger good, where we feel safe because it's our family, it's our tribe. And I think you mentioned the word tribe. So we feel belonging, and we are not punished. It's a safe environment. So the process is, the way we should be learning should not be like linear based on the acquisition of knowledge, like in university. So if you pass an exam because you said what you were supposed to say, and you have a good grades, but it needs to be iterative. So you try something and you discuss more about what was the learning. So that are the things that are important in order to create and learn these human skills. You cannot learn them by reading a book from a famous writer or a famous leader, or from academical person who has never tried that himself. So it needs to be like a human connection, like I feel related because you tried it. You succeeded or not, it doesn't matter. You know because you have tried this thing. And we feel this connection. The human connection is quite powerful, and it's related to our mirror neurons in the brain. So whenever we see people that are similar to us, we try to feel more in trust, and we try also to mime good behaviors, right? So that's from the individual perspective. Tell us more about the corporate and organizational perspective.
Sure. So, and I think it's important to, I'm glad we started with the individual, because I think that there's also so much blame on institutions and organizations, yet it all starts with the individual effort. And we're not always going to be studying at an institution, no matter how ideal we would like it to be, but we're not always going to be in part of an institution or working for a corporation that's going to provide these opportunities for us to learn. So we have to find our own kind of way. And I was actually talking to to somebody on my podcast the other day, and she mentioned the 3 C's, and we said, for individual to really thrive, you have to be courageous, right? Courageous to kind of try and fail and keep going. Curious, and that's what I feel like you've been saying. It's about courage, it's about curiosity, it's about understanding how is it that you work, how is it that you learn. And then the third part is consistency, right? So consistently practicing certain things, creating habits around learning and new things, and etc. So, if we, as an individual, if we remember just the 3 C's, which is courage, curiosity, and consistency, I think we can make really great progress regardless of which institutions or corporations we're a part of. But on an institution side, I think that, again, it's been eye-opening experience for institutions over the last couple of years. And I think it's been shaken up enough to say, okay, maybe we need to do things a little bit differently. Those that have survived, so the smaller institutions and colleges kind of already went out of business. And I mean, we can see this in several different reports and news. But those that survived, I think it's important to really reflect on the curriculum and really looking at how do we deliver courses. Of course, there's certain things that are very for example, if you're studying to be a doctor, right? Perhaps there is only certain ways you can do it. It does require time and kind of, studying and proper lab work and etc. But I'm talking about regular degrees that are most popular today, like business administration, liberal arts. Where do we really want to take these, right? So looking at how do we want to change the curriculum to make it more applicable for the future of work? And Ivan, as you know, when I was speaking at a conference about this topic, essentially is, institutions preparing the youth, and moderator raised the question and said, well, Elena, but is it the institution's job, the university's job to prepare students for work? And if you think about it, when you look at the definition of higher education, it's actually not to prepare students for jobs. So in fact, it could be an actual argument here, and stay with me here, but so it's not technically the job of higher education to prepare students for jobs. Higher education are there to teach students how to learn, to get their social and emotional skills up, right? So it's really just having those discussions in the classroom, being able to disagree with one another, seeing different perspectives. Is it actually supposed to prepare you for jobs? Not necessarily, but the caveat here is that if we're saying, and this was my argument in this conference, is if we're saying, which is pretty much true, that higher education are not necessarily there for preparing students for jobs, then we need to recognize that the way we sell higher education to students then needs to change. Because when we are recruiting students, when we're going to high schools or other universities or wherever it may be, and we're saying, come study with us, what are we selling them? We're selling them the fact that you're going to get a degree from this institution is going to get you a job. That is a selling point for most institutions out there. I don't know any admissions counselor who says, come, we're going to teach you how to learn, and that's all you're going to get, right? So if we are going to argue the points, some of you, maybe from higher education institutions might be sitting there and saying, well, is it really the job? Because this is the argument that comes up at every conference from professors, from, other educators and administrators. Maybe it's not, but then let's change the way we sell. Because you cannot have both. You cannot tell students we're going to get you jobs and then put them in a classroom or a curriculum that's not actually going to get them a job. And in fact, they're probably going to be worse off towards the end of it because they're so far behind, because they've spent 4 years studying something that's been outdated for years prior to that. And now they're in debt because, especially like countries like the US, they're probably graduating with a lot of debt. So then they have no choice but to go into jobs that they don't necessarily want to do, they really not necessarily might be good at, and it just became irrelevant by the time they graduated. So as you go, and I've talked to many students about this, as they go through 4 years of education, a lot of them change their mind. They say, actually, it's not what I want to do, but I've already spent so much money and time, I might as well stick with it. And so they graduate with degrees they don't really care for. About 50% of university graduates don't go into jobs they actually study, which shows you again the irrelevance of so many degrees out there. It's very difficult to change, because if you want to change your degree at year 2 or 3, you have to start over almost, and you're going to lose again money and time if you want to change your major. So there's a lot of issues there that I think as institutions we really have to be a little bit realistic. It's like, if we're going to sell it as Apple, let's not give them, I don't know, bananas towards the end. So if you're going to sell apples, and that's the aim. But I feel like it's a little bit of manipulation that happens in how we sell education to versus what students actually get. So I think there needs to be, again, a rethink of programs, curriculums, how we sell. And if we are going to sell it as we're going to get them jobs, then finally, what are we going to do to make sure that they get those jobs? And again, I am frankly speaking overhearing about, well, we have internship programs or requirements. Majority of institutions have 1 or 2 internship requirements that students have to do in the summertime, maybe 8 to 12 weeks. It's not enough to prepare somebody for future work or for just work in general. So let's stop saying that. Let's start with implementing these requirements from day one. I think that we've also somewhere have decided that students can only study, that they should not work because it's too much. The students should just study. They should not work. Again, if we're preparing them for work, wouldn't it be better for them to study and work part-time at the same time from the very beginning, from freshman year? Don't you think it's going to have much more impact in terms of how much they're going to be making, the networks they're going to be creating, the skills they're going to be gaining if they work from freshman year? Because right now students are going into freshman year, they're taking, I don't know, 3-4 classes, whatever full-time is. That's not a lot of time if you think about it. There's still a lot of time left in that student's day that they could do something. And if we're going to push this idea of it's going to get you jobs, let's enforce it on them that, hey, you have all this time, here's what you can do, and here's how we can help you get these little jobs that will give you experience, some sort of experience, even if it's working on campus, even if it's working flipping burgers. All of that adds value to the person. So I'll pause here. Yvonne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I I really like what you say, that universities shouldn't be selling what they don't really deliver. But for the few ones who have started, this is an opportunity that is quite amazing, because there is already a trend with universities, especially in the United States, to equip students not even to be ready for work, but to fulfill curiosity. Like, and we have a clear example, Elena. Our intern, Eli, simply, it is quite amazing that he's studying something, cognitive science, which is a mix between technology and how the brain works. And it is quite unique. In a lot of European universities, you wouldn't be able to study that. And that gives us a little bit like the sense that there are some agile universities who are changing, one, in terms of the delivery of the courses. Even today, in fact, I have heard that Harvard is delivering already half of their curricula completely online, that people can buy online. So they don't have to pay the full curricula. And there is more and more of this younger generation who are kind of self-learners, or sometimes it can happen that you have the late bloomers who wants to learn, but at one moment they didn't feel ready, and they are capable of constructing this their own curricula, mixing things that they are passionate about it, and they become even better than the people who have gone into a standard curricula. And that's something that gives us an indication of the future. The future is done for people who can potentially be able to choose different degrees and build their own degree from different places. Corporations are already noticing that in order to be a good coder, or in order to be someone who is a good sales person, you don't need all this complexity of 4 or 5 years of education. That it is something that you can be trained on, or you have acquired. There is a lot of people dropping university to also to follow the passion to do entrepreneurship. And these people, they can be based anywhere. It can be an American based in Thailand or in Dubai, who can acquire this knowledge and build experience of continuous practices from different companies, because today that it is more accessible to have a part-timer from some place around the world. And that's something that, thanks God, that we had the opportunity to reconsider the standardization of how the work is perceived during these last 3 years, in order to be able to allow some people who are brilliant, but they just don't fit in the standardization of our society, but they are capable of delivering so much innovation, so much creativity, and the future of work is going to be definitely made for them. They need choices, they need experiences from different places. So it wouldn't be astonishing that for my daughters, in fact, what is going to happen in 10 years' time is that they have built their own curricula for university. And the second thing is that they have built their experiences. Maybe at the age of 25, they would have worked already in 10 different places. And back in my days, if you were changing too much, you were judged again, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, things. I mean, personally, I think things are changing for the better, and I'm really excited about everything that's happening. But let's just, we have just a few minutes left, so just being mindful. So we looked at how what individuals can do, really from creating the processes that work, from being curious, courageous, and consistent with things that you're doing. From institutions, of course, looking at rethinking how you should look at curriculum, the length, the type of programs, and essentially what services you're providing for the student. And finally, for the corporations, there also needs to be a little bit of work, and I kind of want to put it on both universities and corporates. You need to talk to each other more, period. Like institutions and corporates really need to spend a little bit more time talking to each other. That is more than once a year for the annual career fair or the CV clinics that take place. It's just not enough. It's not enough. It's not effective. And that's the question for again, organizations and institutions: is what you're doing for students or for your future talent effective? And if it's not effective, then let's rethink it, because I see a lot of corporations and institutions doing the same thing over and over again, yet it's not yielding the results, because the talent gap is growing bigger and bigger every year. So between institutions and corporations, and the product that comes out of institutions, which is the student, is becoming further and further away from what actually corporations and the world of work needs. So obviously something's not working. So let's look at how we can close the gap versus continue to just let it grow. So from a corporation, again, talk to each other, because when students are graduating with just one internship, but you guys on a corporate side are asking students for 2 years of experience when they first graduate, there's a disconnect. So maybe institutions need to be a little bit more aware. Like, if that's the requirement of you corporations, what can we do to make sure we satisfy that requirement and create those opportunities for our students, right? Again, I don't want to put everything on just institutions, corporations, because individuals themselves can create those opportunities for themselves as a fresh graduate, as a career change seeker, even as a more senior professional. But if we are going to look at institution and corporation, let's look at how we can do that as well. So it's not all, it really truly takes all three of these parties to talk to each other, to be proactive, to be consistent, to be creative in the way we do things and the way we collaborate. But so anyway, so on corporate side and institutions, talk to each other a little bit more, and then actually take action. So take action into what needs to be done to improve and make things more effective. Also on corporation side, how you onboard, how do you bring on talent, what kind of culture you're creating within an organization also very much matters, because you're gonna have more and more problems recruiting good talent if your culture is not good. Meaning, if you are just a machine and an employee is just a number for you, because these graduates here that are coming into the workforce are not looking necessarily to be a part of a corporate machine. Some of them, sure, but majority of people, again, looking at the YOLO economy, which is very much a reality, and that, new generations are wanting new and different things from the workplace. the reality is this corporate climbing up the ladder may not be attractive to them anymore. So how are you going to attract this young talent that is very creative, that is driven, etc., right, to come and join your corporation in a world where talent is very hard to come by? Great talent is nearly impossible to find, and great talent always has opportunities. And again, there's a reason that they are so sought after, is because they take that individual responsibility. But as corporations, how can we become more attractive to that talent? That's the question. So again, really rethinking about how you recruit, how you onboard, and what kind of culture you bring in this person in, and what kind of culture is happening there. Because even if you bring an average graduate, for example, if you have a great culture, this person, and a great onboarding experience, this person can potentially become a high performer if you have high performance on your team. But that's, again, the question, like adjusting what's in, what are you bringing in, and what can you essentially offer this talent? So, and how do you develop that talent? So I think there's a, again, we can talk about these for hours, and would be happy to continue the conversation. So again, whether you're an institution or a corporation, if you want to go a little bit deeper into actual action steps that you can do, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk about that. On an individual side, of course, we have lots of different resources available on our website. We have a YouTube channel that is quite exciting and insightful in terms of the content that we produce. So definitely check us out. We have a lot of resources that are for free on the website, on the bestearn.com. .co, and yeah, so check us out. Again, if you want to continue conversation, would be happy to just drop us an email. And yeah, I think that's it from my side. Ivan, any final words of wisdom from you?
Not the wisdom, it's almost like summarizing what you just nicely said. It's the key word is change. So change from the individual for the interest that you may to that you want to spot about how you are learning, higher education, changing the way they have to adapt to the agility that is required. Corporations, if they want really top talent, they need to source it really way before they are. Maybe today it needs to be 4 years before they finish university, and they need to already engage with them. Maybe they are the ones who can give us this magic wand and make that they learn these human skills that we have been speaking today. So, and I think there is already some corporations doing it. I have heard that in consulting, there is a couple of companies who are already looking for the talent earlier on, spotting the talent so that they get the best of the best. Otherwise, it was amazing.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for joining. And this again will be on YouTube. So if you want to rewatch it or send it to anybody who might benefit from it, feel free to do so. Ivan, thank you as always for being a great co-host. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Bye.